find yourself suffering from fear of abandonment? Well, many people do. And fear of abandonment begins with childhood attachment. There's an attachment issue that usually happens. There is either a threat of abandonment or actual abandonment. So I'm going to talk to you about something that you might be doing and not realizing you're doing that really contributes to your fear of abandonment. Hi, this is Kalia from Pandora's Box, and today we're going to talk about self-abandonment. Have you ever thought that at the core of your abandonment issues, your abandonment pain, your fear of abandonment is actually abandoning yourself? I talk a lot about self-love. And self-love is where we actually start to consider ourselves. We think about ourselves, we think about our own needs, we think about our own value. We think about our own importance in the world. When we self-abandon, we actually go against ourselves. This is where we fault find we're critical of ourselves. We go against ourselves in so many ways. We actually leave ourselves in emotional pain. We abandon ourselves in emotional pain. And we do this in so many ways, including our various different addictions and distractions. It could be food, it can be drugs, it can be alcohol, it can be relationships. It can be a lot of different things that we use to distract ourselves from our own pain. And so when we do this, we actually are abandoning our own inner child, that innocence within us, while he or she is in pain. It takes a lot of courage to actually be with yourself when you're in pain, to stand with yourself, to sit with yourself, to allow those feelings of discomfort to be there. And so it's really important to start developing a new relationship with yourself and your pain and your dis-ease, the things that are uncomfortable. You know, as a child, it is likely if you grew up in a family that was emotionally shut down or unavailable, that you learned to be that way too in many ways. And you learned that what was going on inside of you wasn't important, it didn't matter. And so you were abandoned emotionally a lot. And sometimes that's what that fear of abandonment is. It's not actually physical abandonment, although that is true for a lot of people. But there's this thing called emotional abandonment. We get emotionally abandoned in childhood when a parent can't be there for us on an emotional level. And so we grow up thinking that our emotions are bad, that there's something wrong with them. And what we have to do as we come into adulthood, as we start growing and recognizing what's going on, is recount the many ways in which you were emotionally shut down as a child, in which your feelings were not considered, in which they were made wrong or bad, in which you were shamed for having feelings. And look at how you actually adopted those same ideas about yourself, that when you were in emotional pain, it was taboo, it was wrong, there was something wrong with it. So instead of actually being able to be present with yourself in pain, you take flight, you find a way to distract yourself, you find a way to avoid. And some people are really, really good at doing this. They do this to the point where they don't realize that they even have anything going on emotionally. They're completely emotionally shut down. Now, most of the clients that I work with are not emotionally shut down. They're aware that they have pain. They're aware that there's something going on within them. They just don't know what to do about it. So the first thing that we do is practice being present with ourselves in our pain, in our discomfort, to be able to really recognize where that pain and discomfort is in the body, and to be able to just sit with that, take note of it, breathe with it. Breathing is really important. In fact, as you do different types of breathing exercise, you can help to release some of that emotion, because as you sit with that emotion, you give it the opportunity to rise up to the surface and then be released, be let go. And as we do this, we start to let go a lot of that emotional baggage that we've been carrying around for a lifetime, in which we're triggered over and over and over again because we've got this big, huge bag of emotions that we haven't dealt with. So as we start being present with ourselves, we start to deal with that emotional pain. We start to allow it to rise up because we're holding the space for it to rise up. So we allow it to rise up and thereby be released. It's going to take a while when you first start doing this process. If you are somebody that has avoided your emotions most of your life, if you were taught that that's the thing to do, you may have a whole truckload of emotional baggage that needs to come to the surface. So there may be some work involved, but as you hold that space, you can just continue to allow it to come up. It will come up in waves. And you learn to actually tolerate your pain. You actually learn how to be with it, that it's not this big bad monster. You learn that it's not so bad. I mean, sure, it hurts, but it's almost like if you have a physical wound, that it hurts, but you can tolerate it. You know it's temporary. You know it's healing. So emotional pain can be very similar, that you learn to tolerate it, you learn to hold space for it, and as you allow it to come up and out and release it in some way, whether it's through breathing, whether it's through, yelling, screaming, crying, whatever it is that you feel moved to do, those layers of emotion can begin to come up and out. And what happens is you begin to connect with your own heart, with yourself, with your inner child on deeper and deeper levels. The more that you are able to be present with the self, with the inner self, whether that's the inner child or however you want to see that, the more that you learn to be present with yourself while these emotions are coming up, the more you will form that bond with that inner self. You won't constantly be looking outside of yourself for somebody else to make that pain go away, to take away that pain, because sometimes we attribute the pain to something else. We think it's just, that hole in the soul, that emptiness within that we need to fill with something or someone from the outside. And the truth is that nobody on the outside can actually ever complete you, can ever fill that hole in the soul, can ever make things right with you. There's only one person that can make things right with you, and that is you. So you've got to begin having that really super strong relationship with yourself, where you can be with yourself in your pain, in your anxiety, in your discomfort, in your fear, to continue to be present with yourself and not run from yourself, not distract from yourself. And when you begin to do that, you'll notice that the abandonment wound begins to heal somewhat, because you realize that the strongest bond that you will ever have in your entire lifetime will never be with somebody else. It will be with you. It will be that bond that you have with your inner self. So the more that you can make friends with your inner self, the more you can sit with whatever's going on, the more you learn that you can rely on yourself. Because what happens is when we continue to abandon ourselves, we lose trust in ourselves. We don't trust ourselves anymore. And the more infringements we have against ourselves, the worse our trust is. So you actually have to learn to build trust with yourself by consistently learning how to be there for yourself in your pain, in your discomfort. As you begin to be there for yourself over and over and over and over, consistently, that part of yourself, that part of your inner being that doesn't trust you, that says, whenever there's a problem, she bails or he bails. That part of you will begin to take notice and say, well, she's not really bailing anymore. He's not bailing anymore. He's sitting here with me, holding space, not distracting so much, not continually going out there seeking relationships on the outside to fill what's going on the inside. So you become wise. You learn that nothing outside of yourself can fill the inner emptiness, the hole in your soul. That only inner bonding can do that. Only bonding with that inner self will fill that emptiness. So if you continually look for that emptiness to be filled through drugs, alcohol, food, relationships, work, or anything else, any kind of distraction at all, including achievements. Our achievements are great. It's great that you want to achieve things in your life. But oftentimes we try to get our sense of worthiness and our sense of being valuable and important in the world based on what we do instead of based on who we are. And the deeper truth is you were born worthy. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to earn it. You don't have to work for it. You're already a good person. You're already worthy of love. You're already worthy of the good things that life has to offer. As a child, you may have, like most children, mistaken neglect or abuse to mean that you're not worthy of love or attention or care. That's simply not true. That's the misunderstandings of a child. It's the misinterpretations of a child. It's the child mind deciding it doesn't have value because it may perceive that mom or dad is not valuing that child, or the teacher isn't valuing that child, or the other children in school, or the siblings, or, a child can interpret a lot of these outer signs to mean there's something wrong with me, that core shame. I'm inadequate. I'm flawed. There's something wrong with me. I'm not good enough. And that's really the great lie that you absolutely don't want to believe. It's important for you to know there is nothing wrong with you. You are okay. Now you may ask, well, what about the narcissist? Isn't there something wrong with him or her? What about people that are borderline? What about people that have mental illness? Isn't there something wrong with them? Well, we have to look deeper to this. All personality disorders and mental illness usually stems from childhood neglect, abuse, or lack of appropriate bonding with the primary caregivers. It really creates a fragile psyche. So as that child develops into an adult, it develops into an adult with a fragile psyche. And the personality disorders and the mental illness and all the different things that are going on with that person is a result of a fragile psyche. Doesn't mean that that person isn't worthy. I mean, those of you who have loved someone with a personality disorder or a mental illness, you still love that person. You still find that person worthy. I mean, you may be really angry right now because hurt people. They can do some really crummy things to people. It doesn't make them unworthy. It makes them acting out from their wounds, or it causes them to act out from their wounds. Each one of us are responsible for taking care of ourselves, for making sure that we get the help and the healing that we need to become strong, healthy, emotionally healthy, functioning adults. So that's why we're all here. That's why we're doing this work. And I really do appreciate you joining me in this process, because the truth is, the more that we focus inward, the more we connect with our deeper self, the healthier and happier we become. And isn't that really what we want? A lot of people come to me looking for another partner already. It's like, well, what do I need to do to have a better relationship? I understand that. We'd all love to have a really great relationship. But those really great relationships out there in the world that we're going to attract to us come from our relationship with ourselves. So what your relationship is showing you, that outer relationship is showing you, is how strong is that relationship you're having with yourself. You know, I'm always amazed to find that there's more. There's more work to do. There's more things to look at, because our relationships really do mirror something to us. It mirrors our relationship with ourselves. Oftentimes, though, our relationships give us a really great opportunity to love ourselves more, especially if there is neglect or abuse or judgment or fault finding or anything like that going on in our outer relationships. It gives us an opportunity to say, no, this isn't going to work for me, because I deserve better than that, because I'm worthy of more than that, because I love myself. I'm good enough. I deserve to have good enough. So we learn to start walking away from relationships where we feel devalued or minimized or unloved or unsafe or any of those things. We learn to let go because we don't need them. We don't need those outer relationships. There may be a part of you that believes that you need them, but you really don't. What you really need is that relationship with yourself. You need for that to deepen, to grow stronger. And you can be so solid in that. I know it's been such a journey for me, this self-love journey, and it gets stronger and stronger and stronger, to where now I'm feeling like we got this. We can do this. It doesn't matter what's happening out there in the world. It doesn't matter how much chaos, how much betrayal, abuse, judgment, things that happen on the outside world that seems to be directed at me, that seems to be people out there saying, Kalia, there's something wrong with you, you're not good enough. And I recognize that now as having nothing to do with me. I had to learn the hard way, because for the longest time I really did believe, well, it's because I'm not worthy, it's because I'm not good enough, it's because there's something wrong with me. But now I understand that people just get triggered, and I'm a really good person to get triggered with, because I tend to see into people. I tend to really shine the light on those wounds with people, not by what I say, but because of who I am. So people might lash out at me and find fault with me. And I'm learning this, that this has nothing to do with me. If somebody is lashing out, they're lashing out from their own pain. And it really doesn't have anything to do with me. So I can take that step back and release attachment to needing it to be different. The codependent in us oftentimes wants to fix it. We want to go and say, hey, let me tell you how it really is. Let me prove to you that I'm a good person. We don't have to prove ourselves to anybody, because we already know we're a good person. We already know we're worthy. So why do we have to prove it to this person or to this person? We don't. And so the more that we can take that step back and stop trying to get through to somebody that you can't get through to, that you can't have a conversation with, the more that we can really return to ourselves and to that safe place of going within. Going within should really be a safe place. And so practice this through taking plenty of time to sit with yourself in the silence, journaling, writing down how you're feeling, have a feelings journal so that you're really clear about what's going on inside of you. That's a very important thing, is to understand and know what's going on inside of you. So breathing is another great thing to learn to just sit there. There are tons of different breathing exercises that you can be doing. But when you're processing emotion, just taking a really long, deep breath in through the nose and holding it for just a second and bringing it back out through the mouth and doing it really deeply and slowly, like to the count of 6 or 7, breathing in deeply, and then exhaling to the count of 6 or 7. And then just repeating that process over and over and over. So it's kind of a slow, deep, rhythmic process where as you're in that process, those emotions can start to surface. It might get a little uncomfortable at times because it's emotional energy that's in that pain body coming up to be released. So just be willing to breathe through the discomfort. And sometimes you find yourself on a real high after you've been doing this for a while. It's like rejuvenating the cells in your body. You begin to feel really good. So the more you practice the breathing, the more that you have a way to release the emotions. Another thing that I teach people to do is actually to put their hand on the part of themselves that is hurting, whether it's the solar plexus or the heart or both. Just to put your hands there and just close your eyes and tune inward and ask yourself, what am I feeling? And when you get clear about what you're feeling, name it. Say it out loud. I feel sad. I feel sad. I take people through this exercise, and oftentimes I have them repeat how they're feeling about 10 times just by naming it, just by being with it and naming it. The energy dissipates. So somebody can be in really intense pain, and I have them do that process. Okay, tune in. What are you feeling? I'm feeling really anxious. I'm feeling really anxious. Okay, so say it out loud 10 times with feeling. Not just I feel anxious, I feel anxious. It's more like I feel anxious. I feel anxious. I feel anxious. So you keep saying that. And I know this goes against the law of attraction where you don't want to say what you don't want to be, but believe me, this works. It's about coming out of denial about how you're feeling by being honest with it. And as you do that, that emotional energy tends to dissipate for most people. So there's 3 things you can start with today. Journaling your feelings, deep breathing with your feelings, and identify and naming your feelings and saying it out loud 10 times. Those 3 things will help you to get more in tune with your inner self and how you're feeling. The other thing to remind you is just be willing to be in the silence with yourself, to hold space for yourself, to maybe journal the ways that you distract yourself from your pain, whether it's watching YouTube videos or movies or whatever it is that you do to distract yourself. Write them down so you're really clear. And this is part of getting to know yourself. You spend time getting to know other people. How much time do you really spend getting to know yourself? Isn't it time? So comment below and let me know what you're doing to take care of your pain. If any of this resonates with you, what you're learning from this, I always love to hear from you. And if you like this video if you find it helpful. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already so you can find out about my new videos. I want to thank you so much for watching today, and I will see you next time.